Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a source that honestly sent me on a bit of a mind-bending journey. We're going to be exploring what's called the physics of abundance. It takes us all the way from our everyday microscopic human fears right up to the undeniable grand logic of the cosmos. It completely changed how I view the resources around us, and I'm absolutely thrilled to unpack this with you. So let's start with a really provocative question. What if the limits of our world are just an illusion designed to keep us afraid? It's a bold hook, I know, but it perfectly challenges our baseline assumptions. Think about it. From the moment we're born, we're constantly told that things are running out. We're told to be careful, to hold back, to conserve. But the source material introduces this incredibly compelling idea. What if scarcity, as we experience it every single day, is actually a constructed trap rather than an absolute truth? And that leads us to the scarcity mindset. Now, the source doesn't frame this as just some basic economic principle. No, it defines it as a deeply rooted psychological weapon of fear. Throughout history, the idea that there simply isn't enough has been used to manipulate human behavior, to breed panic, and to disconnect us from recognizing the sheer, overwhelming volume of resources and solutions that are literally right at our fingertips. So what does this fear actually look like in real life? The source provides some highly relatable and honestly kind of visceral personal anecdotes. Imagine being a kid and getting a beautiful 24-piece colored pencil set, but being so terrified of using them up that you literally tape the box shut. You'd never draw a single picture. Or think about a father restricting the main water valve to the house so his family has to shower in a mere drip just because he's terrified of the water bill. Or being on a freezing motorcycle trip in the pouring rain, shaking to your absolute core, and refusing to buy a cheap bowl of warm soup even though you have the cash, purely out of this irrational fear that you might run out of money later. It even scales up to adults panic selling their homes at massive losses just because the market fluctuated. These are the uncomfortable, paralyzing symptoms of the scarcity mindset.
It's wild when you contrast these two mindsets. On one hand, you have the scarcity reaction, which is basically paralyzing fear. It's taping up those colored pencils to preserve them forever, which ironically makes them completely useless. On the other hand, the abundance reaction is actually using those pencils to create beautiful art, trusting that when they run out, you'll have the means to get more. One mindset destroys the value of a resource by hoarding it. The other extracts the maximum joy and utility out of it.
Let's zoom way out for a second, away from colored pencils and soup, and look at the breathtaking scale of the cosmos. The cosmic reality completely shatters this illusion of scarcity. Logically speaking, we just do not live in a limited system. The source points out that our universe consists of trillions of galaxies. Even our own sun, which outputs an unfathomable amount of energy, is just one average star among trillions. When you really step back and observe the sheer scale of the universe, the idea that the baseline reality of our existence is lack or limitation, it just starts to completely fall apart.
Okay, so how does this abundance work mathematically down here on Earth? Take a look at this staggering number, 24,000. What does that represent? Well, it represents the compounding math of nature. When you break the math down, it is absolutely incredible. You start with just one single apple seed, right? That seed grows into a tree that yields roughly 800 apples every single year. And inside those 800 apples are enough seeds to plant roughly 24,000 future trees. That is from one seed in 1 year. I mean, nature isn't built on scarcity. It is exponential mathematical abundance that is constantly multiplying itself. Now, when you apply this compounding principle to human history, it yields some pretty incredible results. Centuries ago, the absolute richest kings on the planet didn't have climate control, refrigeration, or fast travel. Then jump to a few decades ago, and we were celebrating the absolute miracle of basic global telecommunications. Today, the average person walks around with a smartphone containing the entirety of the world's knowledge, can fly across continents in a matter of hours, and controls the exact temperature of their home with the push of a button. To really put this into perspective, let's compare an ancient ruler to, well, a modern human. An ancient ruler relied on smoky fireplaces and manual fans. You have instant AC. They had to wait months for a messenger on horseback. You can instantly video call someone across the globe. They ate only what was local and in season. You literally have year-round global food access at the local supermarket. They traveled for months by carriage or ship. You hop on a commercial flight for a few hours. The modern average living standard far, far exceeds the wildest luxuries of ancient rulers. Human civilization's trajectory is one of absolute exponential growth. And this trajectory tells us exactly why we don't need to panic about the future. Historically, as human needs grow, our ability to extract and create new resources expands right along with them to meet that need. The source notes that whenever we thought we were running out of something, like energy for example, we found vast new underground reserves or developed totally new methods of extraction. Today, we're seeing the rise of artificial intelligence doing the exact same thing for mental labor. History consistently shows us that human innovation continuously unlocks entirely new layers of abundance.
Which brings us to what I think is a real game changer. It's the core physics of abundance principle in today's source material, the law of infinite solutions. It proposes that if the laws of physics allow an outcome to happen, a solution already exists, and it is almost always astonishingly simple. The only thing standing in our way isn't a lack of resources, it's our own limited, scarcity-driven thinking.
To illustrate this, the source shares this fantastic, everyday metaphor, the ping-pong ball problem. So the author was playing ping pong, and the balls kept rolling under this heavy furniture. The hard way to solve this was straining, reaching way under the sofa and scraping his hands on the metal springs to fish them out. But then he stopped. He asked himself if there was a physics-based, frictionless alternative. The amazingly simple tool he found? A battery-powered leaf blower. 2 seconds of air and bam, dozens of balls flew out from every corner. No scratching, no heavy lifting. It just goes to show that complex, frustrating problems often have shockingly simple solutions when you view them through the lens of physics.
The source points out that the most innovative thinkers of our era, the folks revolutionizing space travel and electric vehicles, they operate on this exact premise. If physics dictates it is possible, then the only limitation is our own thinking. They don't just accept that something can't be done just because it hasn't been done yet. They trust that the universe has an infinite number of solutions available if you just apply the laws of physics. So we're basically left choosing between two paradigms. The hard way is that exhausting scarcity mindset. It's accepting it is what it is, straining your back and scraping your hands trying to force a result. But the physics way? That's the abundance mindset. It's stepping back, assuming a remarkably easy solution already exists, and constantly asking yourself, what is the simple leaf blower solution to this problem? Now you might be wondering, how do we make this practical? How do we actively shift our minds from that psychological trap of scarcity over to the mathematical reality of abundance? Basically, how do we rewire our brains to stop taping up the colored pencils and start looking for the leaf blowers in our lives?
While the source points to one highly functional tool to do this, and you might be surprised by it, gratitude. But we aren't framing this as just some polite social construct. Actually, scratch that, it is a literal focus-shifting mechanism. Gratitude actively directs your brain toward the abundance that already exists around you, which logically expands your psychological capacity to spot and receive more of it.
When you look at gratitude as a multiplier effect, the mechanics make total sense. First off, it forces your brain to recognize existing resources. I mean, you can't be terrified of starving if you're actively acknowledging the food already in your fridge, right? It cultivates an emotional state of absolute peace, which prevents you from panic-sabotaging your current assets, like your home or your investments. And it logically aligns your mind to calmly spot new, physics-based solutions. Essentially, if you learn to appreciate the drops, your mind becomes fully capable of managing the ocean. Which leaves us with one final, profound question to consider. Look at your own life, your own projects, your own resources. Are you using gratitude to expand your capacity to receive the mathematical abundance of the universe? Or are you operating out of fear, hoarding your potential, and still taping up your colored pencils? It's a huge choice, and definitely something to think about. Thank you so much for joining me to unpack this, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.